Your sister's housewarming party was so lovely, Mom said. When are you going to catch up? I looked at her and said, I hosted mine last year. You just weren't on the guest list. Her fork froze mid-air. Your sister's housewarming party was so lovely, Mom said. When are you going to catch up? I looked at her and said, I hosted mine last year. You just weren't on the guest list. Her fork froze mid-air. The silence that followed was deafening. My mother's fork literally stopped halfway to her mouth. A piece of grilled salmon balanced precariously on the tines. My sister Jessica's wineglass paused at her lips, and even my stepfather Dave looked up from his phone for the first time all evening. I'd been waiting 3 years to say those words. 3 long years of passive-aggressive comments, subtle digs, and being treated like the family disappointment. And now, sitting in this overpriced bistro that Mom had chosen because it's close to Jessica's new house, I finally had my moment. But let me back up, because this story doesn't start with dinner. It starts with a pattern that began when I was 12 and Jessica was 14, and it's taken me until I'm 32 to finally break free from it. Growing up, Jessica was the golden child. She was 2 years older, naturally athletic, academically gifted, and had this effortless charm that made adults fawn over her. I was the quiet one, the bookish one, the one who spent more time in my room reading than socializing. Our parents divorced when I was 10, and when Mom remarried Robert 2 years later, the dynamic only got worse. Robert had his own daughter from his first marriage, but she lived across the country with her mother. Jessica quickly became his surrogate daughter, the one he could dote on and be proud of. I became invisible. Jessica went to college on a full scholarship. I went to community college and worked part-time at the bookstore to pay for it. Jessica got a high-paying job in marketing right out of college. I struggled through various retail and administrative positions while trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. Jessica got married to her college boyfriend Mike in a lavish wedding that Mom and Robert mostly paid for. I was still single and, according to family dinner conversations, focusing on my career, which was code for can't keep a man. The thing is, I wasn't actually struggling as much as they thought. While Jessica was living the picture-perfect life they all expected, I was quietly building something of my own. I'd always been good with numbers and had a knack for understanding financial markets. I started doing freelance bookkeeping for small businesses, then moved into financial consulting. I was making decent money, but I lived modestly and didn't feel the need to broadcast my success. Meanwhile, Jessica's perfect life started showing cracks. Mike turned out to be less ambitious than she'd hoped, content with his middle management position and weekend golf games. Their marriage became a series of passive-aggressive social media posts and increasingly expensive purchases designed to showcase a happiness that didn't quite ring true. But none of this mattered to Mom and Robert. Jessica was still the successful one, the one with the husband and the nice house and the Instagram-worthy life. I was still the disappointment, the one they had to make excuses for at family gatherings. The breaking point came 3 years ago. I'd been dating someone seriously for the first time in years, a wonderful man named Alex who was an architect. We'd been together for 8 months, and I was genuinely happy. I thought maybe, finally, I'd have something that would make my family see me differently. I brought Alex to Jessica's birthday party. It was a big affair. She'd rented out a private room at an upscale restaurant, and all her friends and our extended family were there. I was nervous but excited to introduce Alex to everyone. Within an hour, it was clear that Jessica had set her sights on him. She monopolized his conversation, laughed a little too loudly at his jokes, and found excuses to touch his arm whenever she made a point. When I tried to join their conversation, she'd somehow redirected to topics I wasn't familiar with or bring up shared memories with Mike that excluded me. The worst part was watching Alex's face light up when she talked to him. Jessica had always had this magnetic quality, and I could see him falling under her spell. By the end of the night, he was exchanging business cards with her, talking about some architecture project her marketing firm was working on. 2 weeks later, Alex broke up with me. He said we weren't compatible long-term and that he thought I was a really nice person but he didn't see a future for us. 3 months after that, I saw photos on Jessica's Instagram of her and Mike having dinner with Alex and his new girlfriend. Apparently, they'd all become great friends through that business connection. I never found out if anything inappropriate happened between Jessica and Alex, but it didn't matter. What mattered was that once again, Jessica had taken something that was mine and made it about her. And once again, my family acted like it was perfectly natural. That's when I made a decision. I was done trying to earn their approval or respect. I was going to focus on building the life I wanted, and I wasn't going to share it with people who couldn't see my worth. I threw myself into my work with a new intensity. I started my own financial consulting firm, targeting small and medium-sized businesses that bigger firms ignored. I was good at it, really good. I had a talent for seeing opportunities others missed and helping business owners maximize their profits while minimizing their risks. Within a year, I was making more money than I'd ever dreamed possible. Within 2 years, I was making more than Jessica and Mike combined. I bought a beautiful house in a trendy neighborhood across town, not a McMansion like Jessica's, but a restored 1920s craftsman with original hardwood floors, a gorgeous garden, and enough character to make design magazines jealous. I also met someone new. David, yes, another David, but nothing like my stepfather, was a pediatric surgeon with kind eyes and a dry sense of humor. He didn't care about impressing people or keeping up appearances. He worked long hours at the Children's Hospital and spent his free time volunteering at a clinic for underprivileged families. We moved in together after a year, and he proposed 6 months later? It wasn't a flashy proposal. He asked me on a quiet Sunday morning while we were drinking coffee in our garden, reading the newspaper. The ring was simple but elegant, and when I said yes, he kissed me like I was the most precious thing in the world. I didn't tell my family about the engagement right away. I was savoring the happiness, protecting it from their inevitable criticism or lack of enthusiasm. David understood. He'd grown up with a narcissistic mother and knew all about protecting good things from toxic family dynamics. Instead, I focused on planning the life I wanted. David and I decided on a small, intimate wedding. Just our closest friends and the family members who actually supported us. We found a beautiful venue, a historic inn with gardens that overlooked the lake. We hired a photographer, a florist, and a caterer who specialized in farm-to-table cuisine. We also decided to have a housewarming party for our home. Not because we needed to show off, but because we'd made this beautiful space together and wanted to share it with people we cared about. We invited our closest friends, David's colleagues from the hospital, some of my business clients who'd become friends, and David's family, who were lovely people who'd embraced me from the moment they met me. I made a deliberate choice not to invite my mother, Dave, or Jessica. It wasn't done out of spite. Okay, maybe it was a little bit out of spite, but mostly it was about protecting my happiness. These people had spent decades making me feel small and unworthy. I wasn't going to invite that energy into my beautiful new home. The party was magical. We strung lights through the garden and set up tables on the back patio. David's sister-in-law, who was a chef, helped me prepare an amazing spread of food. People mingled and laughed and complimented our home. David's parents pulled me aside to tell me how happy I made their son. My best friend Sarah gave a toast about how proud she was of the life I built. It was everything a housewarming party should be: warm, welcoming, and full of people who genuinely cared about us. Looking around at all those happy faces, I felt a sense of belonging I'd never experienced with my own family. Of course, word got back to my mother eventually. Small town, mutual acquaintances, social media posts from friends who didn't know about the family drama. About a month after the party, Mom called me. "Sarah, I heard you had some kind of party at your house?" Her tone was carefully neutral, but I could hear the hurt and confusion underneath. "Yes," I said simply. "A housewarming party." "Oh." A long pause. "That sounds nice. I wish I'd known about it." "It was lovely," I replied, not taking the bait. Another pause. "Well, maybe next time you could let us know. We would have loved to see your new place." "Maybe," I said, though we both knew there wouldn't be a next time. That was the extent of it for a while. Mom would make occasional comments about wanting to see the house, and I'd make non-committal responses. Jessica tried a different approach, suggesting we all get together for dinner soon and asking pointed questions about my new life. I deflected politely but firmly. Meanwhile, my actual life was flourishing. My business was growing faster than I could handle. David and I got married in a small ceremony that was absolutely perfect. His family, my best friend Sarah, a few close friends, and an officiant who'd known David since childhood. We honeymooned in Italy, staying in small towns and eating incredible food and falling more in love every day. When we got back, we settled into married life with an ease that surprised everyone, including us. David would get up early for his hospital rounds, and I'd work from my home office, consulting with clients and building my business. In the evenings, we'd cook dinner together and talk about our days. On weekends, we'd work in the garden or explore new restaurants or have friends over for casual dinners. It was a quiet, contented life, and for the first time ever, I felt truly at peace. But peace, as I was about to learn, was something my family couldn't tolerate for long. The phone call came on a Tuesday afternoon. I was reviewing financial statements for a new client when my phone rang. Mom's name appeared on the screen, and something made me answer instead of letting it go to voicemail. "Sarah, honey, I have some exciting news." Mom's voice was brighter than usual, which immediately put me on alert. "Oh?" "Jessica and Mike bought a new house. It's absolutely gorgeous. 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, a gourmet kitchen, and a 3-car garage. It's in that new development on the north side of town, you know, where all the young professionals are moving." I made appropriate murmuring sounds while she described the house in detail. It sounded like exactly the kind of place Jessica would choose, Big, expensive, and designed to impress rather than to live in comfortably. She's planning a housewarming party for next month, Mom continued. The whole family's invited, of course. I'm so excited to see everyone together. It's been too long since we've all been in the same place. The emphasis on all wasn't subtle. This was Mom's way of ensuring I understood that I was expected to attend and play the role of the supportive younger sister. That sounds nice, I said carefully. You'll come, won't you? Jessica specifically asked me to make sure you'd be there. She's so excited to show off the house. Of course she was. Jessica had always needed an audience for her triumphs, and I'd always been the perfect foil, the less successful sister whose presence made her accomplishments shine brighter. I'll have to check my schedule, I said. Oh, come on, Sarah. It's family. Whatever you have going on can wait. That casual dismissal of my time and commitments was so typical that I almost laughed. In Mom's mind, my work, even though it was now more lucrative than Jessica's, was still just a hobby I could set aside whenever family required my presence. I'll let you know, I said firmly. Well, don't wait too long. Jessica needs a head count for catering. After I hung up, I sat in my office for a long time, looking out at the garden David and I had planted together. Part of me wanted to simply decline the invitation and avoid the whole thing, but another part of me was curious. I wanted to see this house that had required such a production. I wanted to see if Jessica and Mike were as happy as they were pretending to be. And maybe, just maybe, I wanted to see how my family would react to the person I'd become. David found me there when he got home from the hospital that evening. You look thoughtful, he said, dropping a kiss on top of my head. I told him about the phone call and the invitation. He listened without judgment, the way he always did. Do you want to go? He asked when I finished. I'm not sure. Part of me thinks it would be masochistic, but part of me is curious. About the house? About whether they've changed at all. About whether they can see who I am now, or if they'll still treat me like the disappointing little sister who can't get her life together. David was quiet for a moment. You know that their opinion of you doesn't change who you are, right? You've built an amazing life. You're successful. You're happy. You're loved. Whether they can see that or not is their problem, not yours. I know, I said. But I spent so many years trying to earn their approval. Sometimes I wonder if I'll ever be completely free of that. Maybe going would help you find out. He was right, of course. I called Mom the next day and told her David and I would attend. The housewarming party was exactly what I'd expected. The house was enormous and sterile, filled with expensive furniture that looked like it had been selected by a decorator rather than chosen with love. There were about 50 people there, most of whom I didn't recognize. Jessica had invited her work colleagues, her gym friends, her book club, and various neighbors she barely knew. It felt more like a networking event than a celebration. Jessica looked beautiful, as always. She was wearing a designer dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly mortgage payment, and her makeup and hair were perfect. But there was something brittle about her smile, something desperate in the way she flitted from group to group, making sure everyone was admiring her beautiful home. Mike was holding court by the bar, telling the same stories he'd been telling for years about his college football glory days. He'd gained weight and lost hair, and there was a soft, defeated quality to him that made me feel a little sad. Mom and Dave were in their element, playing the proud parents and showing off their successful daughter's accomplishments to anyone who would listen. They introduced David and me to a few people as Jessica's sister and her husband, never mentioning my name or what I did for a living. David squeezed my hand when he noticed. "How are you doing?" he murmured. Better than I expected, I realized. Watching this performance, I felt detached rather than hurt. These people were strangers to me now, playing roles in a drama I was no longer invested in. The house tour was painful. Jessica led groups of guests through each room, pointing out expensive features and designer touches. The master bedroom had a walk-in closet bigger than my first apartment. The kitchen had professional-grade appliances that clearly had never been used. The formal dining room had a table that seated 12 but felt cold and unwelcoming. "What do you think?" Jessica asked me when we ended up alone in the kitchen for a moment. "It's very impressive," I said honestly. "I know it's bigger than what you're used to," she said with that familiar condescending smile. "But Mike and I are planning for the future. We want to have kids, and we want them to have space to grow." The implication was clear. My house was small and inadequate, suitable only for someone with limited ambitions. 3 years ago, that comment would have stung. Now, I just felt sorry for her. "It's beautiful, Jessica. I hope you'll be very happy here." Something in my tone must have surprised her, because she looked at me more closely. "You seem different," she said. "Do I?" "More confident, I guess. It suits you." It was probably the closest thing to a compliment she'd ever given me, and I found myself genuinely touched. "Thank you," I said. "I'm happy." "Good," she said, and for a moment, she almost seemed to mean it. The rest of the party passed uneventfully. David charmed everyone he met, including my parents, who seemed genuinely impressed by his accomplishments and his obvious devotion to me. We left early, claiming he had an early surgery the next morning. Well? David asked as we drove home. It was exactly what I expected. Expensive, impressive, and completely empty of any real warmth or personality. And how do you feel about that? I thought about it. Relieved, actually. I used to think I wanted that life, the big house, the perfect marriage, the family approval. But seeing it up close, I realized it would make me miserable. Even if it came with your family's respect, especially then. Because it would mean I had to become someone on not to earn something that should have been given freely. We drove the rest of the way home in comfortable silence. When we pulled into our driveway, I looked at our house, our beautiful, modest, character-filled house, and felt a wave of gratitude. This was home. This was enough. This was everything. I thought that would be the end of it. I'd seen Jessica's new life, confirmed that I didn't want it, and proved to myself that I'd moved beyond needing my family's validation. Case closed. But families, especially dysfunctional ones, don't let go that easily. The comments started a few weeks after the party. Mom would call and casually mention how excited Jessica was about decorating her new home, or how Mike was talking about getting a boat to go with their new 3-car garage. There were subtle bigs about my little house and questions about when David and I were planning to upgrade. Jessica started posting more frequently on social media, documenting every expensive purchase and home improvement project. New furniture, professional landscaping, a renovation of the already perfect kitchen. Each post seemed designed to showcase a lifestyle that was increasingly extravagant and, frankly, unsustainable on their salaries. I started to wonder where the money was coming from. Jessica made good money in marketing, but not enough to support this level of spending. Mike's salary was decent but nothing spectacular. The house alone must have stretched their budget to the breaking point, and they seemed to be adding expenses weekly. My suspicions were confirmed when David and I ran into Mike at the grocery store one Saturday morning. He looked tired and stressed, and when David mentioned something about the beautiful new house, Mike's smile was strained. "Yeah, it's great," he said. "A little more than we bargained for, financially speaking, but Jessica has her heart set on making it perfect." "These things have a way of working out," David said diplomatically. "I hope so. Between you and me, I'm picking up extra shifts at work and considering a weekend job. The mortgage payments are significant." I felt a stab of sympathy for him. Mike might not be the most ambitious person in the world, but he was fundamentally decent, and I could see the stress eating at him. "If you ever need any financial advice," I found myself saying, "I do consulting work. I might be able to help you figure out a budget that works." Mike's face lit up with genuine gratitude. "Really? That would be amazing. Jessica keeps saying we just need to make more money, but I think we might need to spend less instead." We exchanged numbers, and I told him to call me if he wanted to talk. As we drove home, David shook his head. "You realize Jessica's going to hate that, right? Her little sister helping her husband with money problems? Probably. But Mike seems like he's drowning, and I can't just watch that happen." "Even after everything? Mike never did anything to me. His only crime was marrying my sister." David laughed. "You're a better person than I am. I'd probably let him sink just to spite her." "No, you wouldn't. You'd do the same thing I'm doing, because it's the right thing to do." He reached over and squeezed my hand. "This is why I love you." Mike never called. I wasn't entirely surprised. Either he decided against it on his own, or Jessica found out about our conversation and put a stop to it. Either way, it was probably for the best. I had enough drama in my extended family without adding financial counseling to the mix, but the spending continued, and so did the social media posts documenting it. Jessica seemed to be in competition with someone, though I couldn't figure out who. The posts became more frequent and more elaborate. Professional photos of perfectly staged rooms. Videos of her workout routine in their new home gym. Pictures of expensive dinners and weekend getaways. It all came to a head 6 months later when Mom called with news that shouldn't have been surprising but somehow still was. "Sarah, I need to tell you something, and I don't want you to hear it from someone else." My stomach dropped. In my experience, conversations that started this way never ended well. "What's wrong?" "Jessica and Mike are getting divorced." I sat down heavily in my office chair. "What happened?" "I don't know all the details. Jessica says they grew apart, wanted different things. Mike apparently wasn't supportive of her ambitions. That was Jessica's version, anyway." I wondered what Mike's side of the story would be. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, and I meant it. Whatever my issues with Jessica, I didn't wish unhappiness on her. "She's having a hard time," Mom continued. "The house is too expensive for her to manage on her own, and Mike's being difficult about the divorce settlement. She might have to sell." There it was, the real reason for the call. "That's tough," I said carefully. "I was hoping. Well, I know you're doing well financially now. Maybe you could help her out, just temporarily, until she gets back on her feet. The audacity of it took my breath away. After years of treating me like a failure, after excluding me from family events and dismissing my accomplishments, they wanted me to bail Jessica out of the financial hole she dug for herself. Mom, I know it's a lot to ask. But she's your sister, Sarah. Family helps family. Family helps family. Where had that philosophy been when I was struggling through community college while Jessica got a free ride? Where had it been when I was working retail jobs and getting condescending advice about my life choices? Where had it been for the 30 years I'd been trying to earn a place in this family? I'll think about it, I said, because I wasn't ready to have this fight over the phone. Thank you, sweetheart. I knew you'd understand. Jessica will be so relieved. After I hung up, I sat in my office for a long time, staring at the financial statements spread across my desk. I was doing well. Better than well. I could afford to help Jessica without even noticing the financial impact. The question wasn't whether I could help, but whether I should. David found me there when he came home, still staring at the papers. Bad day? He asked. I told him about the phone call. He listened with the same patient attention he always gave me, but I could see his jaw tightening as I talked. So let me get this straight, he said when I finished. Your sister spent herself into debt trying to maintain a lifestyle she couldn't afford, is getting divorced partly because of the financial stress she created, and now your mother wants you to pay for her mistakes? That's about the size of it. And what did your mother say about all the times you could have used help? All the times Jessica got support that you didn't? Nothing. Because that's different, apparently. David sat down across from me. Sarah, you know I'll support whatever decision you make. But I have to ask, what do you think would happen if you said no? They'd be angry, disappointed. They'd probably stop speaking to me altogether. And would that be a loss? It was a fair question. What exactly would I be losing? Occasional phone calls where I was made to feel inadequate? Invitations to events where I was treated like an afterthought? The privilege of being the family's scapegoat? I don't know, I said honestly. Part of me thinks it would be a relief. But they're still my family. Being related to someone doesn't give them the right to treat you badly. And it doesn't obligate you to enable their poor decisions. He was right, of course. But knowing something intellectually and feeling it emotionally are two different things. I spent the next few days wrestling with the decision. I talked to Sarah, my best friend, who was characteristically blunt. Are you insane? She said when I told her about Mom's request. These people have treated you like garbage for decades, and now they want you to pay for the privilege? Tell them to pound sand. But I also found myself thinking about Mike, who'd seemed so stressed and overwhelmed at the grocery store. And despite everything, I did feel sorry for Jessica. Divorce is hard on everyone, even people who bring it on themselves. In the end, it was a conversation with David's sister Emma that helped me see things clearly. Emma was a therapist who specialized in family dynamics, and she had a way of cutting through emotional confusion to get to the heart of things. The question isn't whether you can afford to help, she said over dinner one night. The question is whether helping would actually be helpful. What do you mean? If you bail Jessica out, what does she learn? That her choices don't have consequences? That she can always count on other people to fix her problems? Is that really helping her? Or is it just enabling her to continue making poor decisions? But if I don't help, she could lose her house. She could lose the house she bought with money she didn't have to impress people she doesn't even like. Would that really be the worst thing in the world? Emma was right. Helping Jessica avoid the consequences of her choices wouldn't teach her anything or change her behavior. It would just postpone the reckoning and probably make it worse when it finally came. I called Mom the next day and told her I wouldn't be giving Jessica money. The reaction was about what I'd expected. Hurt, tone, anger. Accusations of selfishness and disloyalty. Mom cried and said she was disappointed in me. Dave got on the phone and lectured me about family obligations. Jessica herself called later that week and our conversation was even worse. I can't believe you'd abandon me like this, she said, her voice thick with tears. I'm your sister, Sarah. How can you watch me lose everything and not care? I do care, I said, but giving you money won't solve the real problem. What real problem? The problem is that I need help and my own sister won't give it to me. The problem is that you're living beyond your means and have been for years. Giving you money now would just enable you to keep making the same mistakes. So you're going to let me lose my house to teach me a lesson? What kind of person is that? The kind of person who's learned that sometimes love means saying no. She hung up on me. The next few months were difficult. Jessica did end up losing the house. She couldn't afford the mortgage payments on her own, and Mike refused to keep paying for a house he didn't live in. She moved into a smaller apartment across town and had to sell most of the expensive furniture that wouldn't fit. Mom and Dave were furious with me. They made it clear that they blamed me for Jessica's hardship and that I was no longer welcome at family gatherings. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was being punished for the same behavior they'd always rewarded in Jessica, looking out for my own interests. But something unexpected happened as the months passed. Without the pressure of maintaining that expensive lifestyle, Jessica started to seem lighter, somehow. Her social media posts became less frequent and more genuine. Instead of showcasing expensive purchases, she posted pictures of books she was reading, walks she was taking, meals she was cooking in her small apartment kitchen. She got a new job with a smaller company that paid less but offered better work-life balance. She started therapy to deal with the divorce and her financial stress. She adopted a rescue dog, a scruffy little mutt named Charlie who appeared in almost every photo she posted, usually looking absolutely delighted to be alive. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I ran into her at the farmer's market downtown. She was buying vegetables and looked genuinely happy for the first time in years. "Sarah," she said, and there was no anger in her voice, just surprise. "Hey, Jessica, how are you doing?" "Good, actually, really good." She gestured to her shopping bag full of fresh produce. "I'm learning to cook. Turns out it's kind of therapeutic." "That's great. You look peaceful." She laughed. "That's not a word anyone's ever used to describe me before. But yeah, I think I am. Losing the house was awful at the time, but it forced me to figure out what I actually wanted instead of what I thought I was supposed to want." "And what do you want?" "Simplicity, I think. A life that fits me instead of one that looks good from the outside." We talked for a few more minutes, and it was the most genuine conversation we'd had in years. When we parted ways, she hugged me. "I was really angry with you for not helping me," she said, "but I think you were right. I needed to figure this out on my own." It wasn't an apology, exactly, but it was acknowledgement, and it was more than I'd ever expected to get. That brings us to 3 weeks ago, when Mom called with another invitation. "I'm taking Jessica out for her birthday dinner," she said. "Just a small celebration at that new place downtown. Would you like to join us?" It was an olive branch, and we both knew it. Mom was ready to have me back in the family fold, now that the crisis was over, and I'd been proven right about not enabling Jessica's poor choices. "I'll think about it," I said. "Please do." It would mean a lot to Jessica. And to me. In the end, I decided to go. Not because I was eager to rejoin the family dynamic, but because I was curious to see how things had changed, and maybe because I wanted to test myself, to see if I could sit at that table and maintain the boundaries I'd worked so hard to establish. Which brings us to last night, sitting in that overpriced bistro, listening to Mom gush about Jessica's housewarming party from the year before. "Your sister's housewarming party was so lovely," Mom said, cutting into her salmon. "When are you going to catch up?" The question hit me like a slap. Here we were, supposedly celebrating Jessica's birthday and new chapter, and Mom couldn't resist taking a dig at me. After everything that had happened, after Jessica herself had acknowledged that her old life had been unsustainable, Mom was still holding it up as the standard I should aspire to. That's when I realized that nothing had really changed. Mom might be willing to have me back at the table, but she still saw me as the disappointing daughter who needed to catch up to her successful sister. The fact that Jessica's success had been built on debt and delusion didn't matter. The fact that I'd built a genuinely stable, happy life didn't register. I looked at her, sitting there with her fork raised, waiting for me to apologize for my smaller house, my quieter life, my different choices. And I realized I was done apologizing. "I hosted mine last year," I said calmly. "You just weren't on the guest list." Her fork froze mid-air. The silence that followed was profound. Jessica's wine glass stopped at her lips. Dave looked up from his phone with genuine shock. Even other diners seemed to sense that something significant had happened. Mom's face went through several expressions: confusion, hurt, anger, and finally a kind of wounded dignity. "I don't understand," she said finally. "I bought a house 2 years ago. David and I had a housewarming party last year. It was lovely, about 40 people, all of whom actually care about us. You weren't invited because you've spent the last 30 years making it clear that you don't care about my life unless it reflects well on you." "Sarah," Jessica said quietly, "maybe we should." "No," I said, not taking my eyes off Mom. "I'm tired of pretending this is a normal family dynamic. I'm tired of being treated like a consolation prize and then expected to be grateful for scraps of attention." Mom's eyes filled with tears. "How can you say that? You're my daughter. I love you." "Do you?" "Because love isn't just a feeling, Mom. It's actions. It's showing up. It's being proud of someone for who they are, not disappointed in them for who they're not." "I'm proud of you," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. "When?"